The warehouse on the edge of Caracas was a place where the air seemed to sweat. Humidity pressed down like a second skin, clinging to clothes, hair, and lungs. The smell was a cocktail of rust, dust, and the sharp bite of gun oil. Shipping containers loomed in rows, their sides painted with faded stencils in Cyrillic. Wooden crates were stacked high, their markings warning of contents no one wanted to open carelessly. Plastic explosives, automatic rifles, boxes of ammunition, the kind of supplies that fueled proxy wars in countries most people could not find on a map. 12 guards patrolled the floor, their movements mechanical, practiced, almost bored. Each man carried the confidence of someone who believed the worst was already behind him. Their weapons hung loose on their shoulders, safeties still clicked into place. To them, tonight was business, not battle. Moving among them was a woman no one noticed twice. Medium height, athletic but not imposing, dressed in the same dark, utilitarian gear as the rest of the security detail. Her name, though none of them knew it, was Alaris Frost. She carried her rifle with the same casual efficiency as the others, kept her stride even, her expression neutral. To the untrained eye, she was just another contractor hired to guard a deal that was already decided. But if anyone had cared to look closely, they might have seen the difference. Her eyes were never still. They flicked to exits, to weapons left unattended, to loose straps and uneven floors. Every movement in her periphery was noted and filed away. Each guard stance, each patrol pattern, each blind spot. She was building a map in her head, one she might soon need. Her earpiece crackled faintly. Static, then a broken voice. Frost, extraction team, compromised. Proceed caution. Asset retrieval only. She tapped the device once in acknowledgement, her face unchanged. The mission had shifted, but the core remained the same. Recover the files, exit clean, no casualties. Her superiors had emphasized that point until it bordered on obsession. No unnecessary bloodshed. The order had felt more like a test of faith than a directive. At the center of the room stood Brixton Hale, the man she had come to intercept. He had the presence of someone who had long grown used to command, a career carved from military service, followed by years of selling those skills to the highest bidder. His salt and pepper hair was cropped short, his jaw square, his knuckles scarred. He wore confidence like armor, and the men around him treated him like a warlord. A technician hunched over a secure drive, wires running to a specialized laptop. The screens flickered, and a moment later the tech raised his head. Verification complete. Files are intact. Hale gave a small nod. Transfer the payment. His voice carried easily across the warehouse, calm but sharp enough to command instant obedience. Alaris kept walking her route, each step drawing her closer. It should have been unremarkable. A contractor doing her job. Yet something about her caught Hale's eye. The way she carried herself, perhaps. The lack of wasted motion. He narrowed his gaze, studying her as one might study a puzzle piece that doesn't quite fit. "You," he called out, gesturing toward her. "Security detail. Credentials." She didn't falter. She reached calmly for the identification clipped to her vest and handed it to the nearest guard. As he examined it, her mind flicked elsewhere. The memorized schematics, the briefing officer's doubtful eyes, the quiet reminder that these men weren't the targets. The files were. Always the files. The guard frowned. His radio crackled to life. He stepped away, muttering into it, his eyes fixed on her the whole time. Frost didn't move. She kept her breathing even, her posture controlled. When the call ended, the guard's expression had hardened. He turned to Hale. "Sir, credentials don't match the approved list. She isn't cleared." Hale's posture shifted instantly, the easy confidence giving way to predatory focus. With a flick of his hand, the room transformed. Guards moved in from every direction, rifles raised, boots echoing across concrete. In seconds, Alaris was surrounded, 12 rifles trained on her chest, 12 pairs of eyes full of certainty. "On your knees," Hale ordered. 2 guards stepped behind her. One drove his boot into the back of her knee, forcing her down. The other yanked her rifle away. She let it happen, her face impassive. As she sank to the concrete, she took stock. 12 men, spread evenly in a circle. Distances measured. Weapons cocked. Blind spots noted. Every detail captured. Hale circled her slowly, like a lion considering a caged prey. "You know what I hate most about this new world," he said. His voice carried the weight of a man used to lecturing enemies before breaking them. "They'll send anyone to do a professional's job, even a woman who can barely hold a rifle properly." The men smirked. Their grips on their weapons loosened just slightly. Alaris said nothing. Her eyes gave nothing away. "Search her," Hale commanded. Rough hands moved across her body, patting down pockets, checking seams. They found nothing more than standard gear, until one guard pulled a small disc from her pocket. A coin, plain metal, stamped with a strange insignia, a stylized ghost. The guard handed it to Hale. For the first time, something cracked in the commander's mask. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly, and fear, brief but unmistakable, crossed his face. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. His voice was tighter now. Still, Alaris remained silent. Her eyes drifted deliberately from one guard to the next, as if she were merely looking. In truth, she was cataloging. Pressure points. Balance weaknesses. The exact moment each man's focus shifted. The silence unsettled them. One guard stepped closer, his knuckles white on his weapon. "Restrain her," Hale snapped. His command lacked the casual authority of moments ago. It carried something else now, urgency. A guard produced zip ties and reached for her wrists. That was when she finally spoke. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. The Phantom Protocol was decommissioned 8 years ago. The words hung in the air like smoke. Hale flinched before masking it with anger. That program was a myth. Rumors among special forces. Nothing more. For the first time, a smile touched her lips. "Then you have nothing to worry about." The room shifted. The guards tightened their grips. Hale's expression hardened into something close to panic. His next words came like a sentence. "Kill her. Now." One guard's hand moved for his sidearm. The click of a holster echoed too loudly in the tense stillness. And in that frozen heartbeat, as weapons began to rise, Alaris Frost's body tensed like a coiled spring. 12 men, one unarmed woman. The odds couldn't be clearer to anyone in the room. Anyone but her. Time slowed in the warehouse. The sound of a pistol clearing, its holster cracked the stillness like the snap of dry wood. Every eye locked on Alaris Frost. 12 rifles, one sidearm, and the absolute confidence of men who believed themselves in control. Alaris saw none of that. She saw vectors, angles, tension in muscles, telegraphing movement. In her mind, the scene unfolded like a puzzle, every piece snapping into place. The nearest guard's thumb rested too heavily on the safety. Another leaned slightly on his back foot, bad balance. A third stood close enough to be used as cover if she timed it right. The first guard's pistol barely cleared leather when she moved. Her left hand shot up, catching his wrist with impossible speed. With a twist, she torqued the joint beyond its natural range. The man screamed as his shoulder popped free of its socket. In the same fluid motion, she stripped the weapon, fingers moving in a blur. The pistol disassembled in her hands mid-turn, pieces clattering uselessly to the concrete. 2 more lunged at her, shouting. She pivoted, still holding the first guard's collapsing body, and redirected his momentum. He slammed into the second man, ribs colliding with the force of a battering ram. Before either could recover, Alaris's palm struck a nerve cluster at the base of the first man's skull. His body went limp, crumpling before he hit the floor. The second stumbled backward into a crate of rifles. He barely had time to breathe before her foot swept his legs out from under him. He crashed to the ground, gasping for air. Chaos detonated. The circle of guards shouted, commands overlapping in panic. Their formation collapsed as each man sought a clear shot. But Alaris never stayed still. She flowed between them, faster than they could adjust. At every moment, one guard's body was positioned between her and the others, turning their rifles into liabilities. A blade flashed in the corner of her vision. A guard lunged with a tactical knife, aiming for her midsection. She caught his wrist mid-strike and twisted, redirecting the blade across another guard's rifle strap. The weapon tumbled uselessly as the knife's owner howled in pain, his elbow joint collapsing under her precise pressure. The knife clattered to the floor, forgotten. Every movement was economy. No flourish, no wasted strength. A clipboard became a projectile, smacking one guard in the temple. A cargo strap looped around another's arm, yanking him off balance. A helmet skidded across the floor and struck a shin hard enough to buckle the man to his knees. She fought not as though her life depended on it, but as though she had trained her entire life for this exact choreography. One guard managed to shout into his radio before she crushed the device beneath her boot. Another tried, only to have his communicator smashed against the wall by his own body, redirected into it with her strength. A third never even finished dialing before the batteries were scattered across the floor. The air filled with the thuds of collapsing bodies, the grunts of men disarmed before they could react, the clatter of weapons reduced to parts on the concrete. Brixton Hale stood frozen. The man who had commanded entire units across battlefields found himself backing away like prey. His hand twitched toward his ankle. A concealed pistol slid from its holster. He barely had it clear before Alaris slid beneath a table and rose behind him. One strike to the wrist, and the gun flew across the floor. "Stand down," Hale shouted, panic edging into his tone. But his men weren't listening. The phantom had been unleashed. Alaris moved faster now, her strikes pared down to pure precision. A nerve cluster paralyzed one man's arm. Another's knee buckled under the smallest twist. Two collided mid-swing when she redirected one's punch into the other's chest. They dropped together, stunned and gasping. It took less than a minute, 60 seconds to undo 12 men. When silence returned, the warehouse looked like the aftermath of a small earthquake. Crates had shifted. Radios lay in shards. Rifles were scattered, broken into pieces. The guards sprawled across the floor, groaning or unconscious, each breathing, none fatally harmed. And in the middle of it, Alaris Frost stood with the calm breathing of someone who had just finished a light workout. Hale didn't move. He couldn't. She had him locked in a nerve hold, twisted into a position that kept him upright, but immobilized. Conscious, aware, utterly powerless. He tried for words, but they came out ragged. "What are you?" She didn't answer. She simply released him into a seated position against a support column, adjusting him as though he were nothing more than another crate in her way. He grimaced, body stiff, unable to resist. Alaris picked up her discarded rifle. She didn't shoulder it. She didn't need to. Instead, she reached into his jacket and pulled free a secure phone. Her fingers moved like a pianist's, bypassing security, opening encrypted files, downloading them onto her own device with practice speed. Hale's breathing grew harsher as he realized what she had already seen. He tried to bluster. "They told us all phantoms were decommissioned, eliminated during the termination order." Alaris looked up, her expression flat. "They missed one." He stared at her, fear widening his eyes. You trained them?" She didn't reply, but the silence was enough. He understood. Around them, his men stirred, groaning. Some sat up, clutching limbs. None of them reached for weapons. Not after what they had witnessed. Not after seeing 12 trained mercenaries neutralized without a single shot fired. The unarmed woman at the center of the storm looked at them with calm indifference. A demonstration of power, but also of restraint. She could have ended them. She hadn't. That was her message. And as sirens began to wail in the distance, closing in, the realization settled over Hale like a shroud. He hadn't just lost an arms deal. He hadn't just been defeated. He had stumbled into the path of a ghost. The phantom lived. The helicopter blades still echoed in her ears when Alaris Frost closed her eyes. Caracas was behind her now, shrinking into the night as the aircraft carried her towards safe airspace. But the fight wasn't what lingered. It was the token, the small disc with a ghostly insignia that Hale had recognized in an instant. Phantom Protocol. The world thought it was a rumor, a soldier's campfire tale. Some whispered of a training program, so radical it could turn an operative into a weapon without ever pulling a trigger. Others dismissed it as fantasy. Officially, the files had been scrubbed, budgets erased, facilities decommissioned. The word was clinical, sterile, hiding the blood behind it. Unarmed knew the truth because she had written the blueprint. 8 years earlier, in the far north of Finland, she had stood in the center of a training facility carved out of ice and pine forest. The winters were brutal enough to test any human body, the isolation total enough to strip away distraction. It was the perfect crucible. She had gathered 27 candidates, soldiers, intelligence assets, even a few civilians whose profiles suggested the right blend of adaptability and discipline. The criteria were unusual. She wasn't looking for the strongest or the most decorated. She wanted the perceptive ones, the ones who noticed everything in a room without being told to look, the ones who could endure boredom as easily as they endured pain. What she created was something different. The Phantom Protocol was never about turning soldiers into killers. It was about proving that killing wasn't necessary. Every lesson bent around one idea: efficiency without lethality. Where most programs drilled endless marksmanship, hers taught how to disarm in a heartbeat, how to break a fight without breaking a body. Where others glorified decisive strikes, hers taught patience, restraint, and an almost surgical use of force. The world didn't understand. At first, the results fascinated her sponsors. Demonstrations showed recruits neutralizing entire teams in mock scenarios without a single fatality. Mission simulations achieved objectives cleanly, leaving behind no corpses to raise alarms. It was the kind of thing politicians claimed to want: operations without blood on the evening news. But behind closed doors, their enthusiasm waned. They didn't want restraint. They wanted deniability. An operative who left survivors left witnesses. Witnesses meant accountability. And accountability was an enemy. Unarmed had refused to compromise. When pressed to shift the program toward more flexible applications, she drew a hard line. "We train ghosts," she had told them, "not assassins." The order to terminate the program arrived less than a month later. It happened at dawn. She wasn't there. She had been dispatched on a field evaluation, scouting a candidate in Tallinn. By the time she returned to Finland, the forest facility was smoke and ash. The barracks were blackened shells, the training rooms charred ruins. Bodies had been cleared, but the bloodstains remained. 27 men and women, instructors, trainees, all of them, eliminated in a single sweep. The official story cited a gas explosion. She knew better. She could read the signatures in the wreckage, the precision of charges, the pattern of destruction. It was no accident. It was an execution. For hours she had wandered the ruins, breathing in the acrid stench of burned wood and scorched flesh, until she found what the kill teams had missed: a single token, half buried in rubble. A coin stamped with the emblem they had chosen as their own. A ghost outlined in silver. She pocketed it and swore she would find out who had signed the order. 8 years. 8 years of moving through shadows, gathering fragments, chasing whispers. Each lead had evaporated until now. Until Hale, on the helicopter. She scrolled through the files pulled from his device. Offshore accounts. Black market arms deals. But buried in the data was what she had been hunting for: names. A committee of 12. Intelligence directors, private contractors, financiers. All of them tied to the termination order. And one name underlined 3 times: Brixton Hale himself. Her chest tightened, not with anger, but with confirmation. Proof. She remembered each face from the Finland facility. Ramirez, who could slip through a crowd unseen. Volov, who could disarm a man twice her size in 3 motions. Nandi, who had once gone 6 days without sleep during endurance training and still performed flawlessly. They had been more than trainees. They had been proof that another way was possible, and they had been slaughtered for it. The files on Hale's phone connected him directly to the operation. There it was in black and white. Encrypted orders, signed authorizations, payments transferred after the facility's destruction. He hadn't just known about the Phantom Protocol. He had helped bury it. Alaris's jaw tightened. She had wanted to believe that maybe it had been bureaucracy, that perhaps her program was simply deemed inefficient. But Hale's files told another story. The program hadn't been shut down because it failed. It had been eliminated because it succeeded, because it proved that missions could be done without killing, and that terrified men who profited from blood. The helicopter banked north. Below, the city lights faded into jungle darkness. She tucked the token back into her pocket, fingers lingering on its worn surface. It was cold, heavy grounding, a reminder of what had been lost and what remained to be done. Her handler's voice crackled through the secure channel. Package secured. Yes, she replied evenly. Confirmation. Files show Hale on the Elimination Committee. Sending coordinates now. Copy. Secondary rendezvous point active. Proceed with caution. Primary compromised. She closed the channel and leaned back in her seat. The rumble of the rotors was steady, hypnotic, but her mind was far from rest. 8 years of silence had ended tonight. The ghost was no longer a rumor. The Phantom Protocol lived, if only through her. And those who thought they had buried it were about to learn what happens when you try to kill a ghost. Zurich woke with a sort of precision that made chaos feel far away. Trams slid along their tracks. Cyclists moved in single file. The river ran cold and clear beneath stone bridges. Alaris Frost walked with the city's rhythm, one more professional among many. The tactical gear and utilitarian black were gone. In their place, a tailored jacket, low heels, hair smoothed into a neat bun. Designer glasses softened her gaze and hid the micro camera set into the frame. She moved through the revolving door of Helvetia Financial Group and into a lobby of glass and quiet money. Polished floors mirrored the morning light. Art that never raised its voice lined the walls. The receptionist glanced up, checked the tablet, and smiled. Ms. Reinhardt, your principal is expected upstairs. You're cleared for the 38th floor. Express elevator to your right. Thank you, Alaris said, German warmed by a faint Viennese lilt. Elise Reinhardt existed on paper in 3 countries and had passed a background check so thorough it would have rattled the real Elise, if she existed at all. The elevator rose with a whisper. Through the glass wall, she watched the city compress into a grid of rooftops and river. She ran the checklist again. Cover story in place. Counter surveillance clean. 2 redundant recorders. Exit routes mapped. The micro camera in her glasses would push an encrypted stream to a relay hidden in a janitorial supply closet on the 20th floor. From there, the file would hop to 3 servers she trusted and 1 she did not, because she wanted certain people to notice. The doors opened to a smaller lobby trimmed in oak. A man waited there with the posture of someone who slept light and woke ready. Former Special Forces, likely. He wore an earpiece and a neutral smile. Ms. Reinhardt, please wait in the observation suite. Your client prefers security staff nearby, but not in the room. Of course, she said. He led her past muted paintings and into a chamber with a large pane of black glass. One way. The conference room sat beyond it, bright and formal, a long table facing the city. She could hear through a ceiling speaker that appeared decorative. She adjusted her glasses, checked the recorder's signal, and let her breathing settle. The first attendees arrived in pairs. An aide placed a folder at each chair, then faded to the wall like a shadow. Then they came. Anton Verne, former director for operations in a European agency that never admitted it existed. His hair had thinned, but his gaze still measured every angle of a room. General Isaac Mercer followed, broader through the chest, carrying the unearned ease of a man protected by other people's fear. Eliza Chamberlain arrived last, expression polished, nails immaculate, a financier's calm stretched over a coil of nerves. They exchanged pleasantries that sounded like weather. Coffee appeared. The door closed. Verne took the head of a table and did not wait long. We will keep this brief. His voice was low and crisp. Hale's detention created ripples. There may be exposure on our previous collaboration in Finland. The word hung there. Finland. The temperature felt colder on Alaris's skin, though the room had not changed. How much exposure? Chamberlain asked, tapping one finger lightly against the folder at her place. And from where? Limited so far, Vern said. There is documentation linking Hale to certain aspects of the termination. Not to any of you, directly, but enough that a competent analyst could construct a line. Patterns are dangerous. Mercer leaned back, chair protesting under his weight. The facility was erased. The bodies were handled. The report survived review. The operation is a closed book. Except for one variable, Chamberlain said. Frost. Silence. It lasted 2 heartbeats. 3. Vern opened his folder and slid out a single photo. A still from a security camera in Caracas. The angle was high. The image blurred at the edges. At the center, a woman shaped the air with her hands. Enough to see motion. Not enough to capture a face. 12 men incapacitated, Vern said. No fatalities. No shots fired. Hale never trained a team like that. But someone did. Mercer's mouth tightened. I thought she died in the blast. So did we, Vern said. We cannot rely on that assumption. The method fits. The timeline fits. If she is alive, she is hunting. On the other side of the glass, Alaris kept her face neutral, though the name spoken in that polished room was hers. The recorder in her glasses hummed discreetly. Every word mattered. Words were often better than bullets. What is the immediate risk? Chamberlain asked. Leakage, Vern said. Hale kept leverage as a habit. Copies of authorizations. Transaction trails. Enough to make him useful. Enough to hurt us, if combined with external context. Mercer turned a page he did not need to look at. Contingency remains in place. We sever edges that could be pulled. We push assets offshore. We scrub vendor lists and switch accounts. The process is routine. It is not routine if she is involved, Vern said. He did not raise his voice. Frost built a doctrine around finding seams. She used ours against us in Venezuela. She will use them again. Chamberlain's tone sharpened by half a degree. So what is your recommendation? We accelerate the contingency and add a second layer, Vern said. We isolate the Finland archive behind triple key authentication, independent of our usual networks. Each key lives on a separate token, one for each of us. No single breach compromises the archive. Mercer nodded. Smart. Chamberlain's finger stopped its tapping. No. Necessary. We keep insurance as insurance. If one of us is taken, the others can still trigger a purge or a disclosure. Alaris tilted her head a fraction. Triple key. Good. Not because it protected them, but because it confirmed the archive existed in one place. She did not need to find 12 sources. She needed 3. Vern closed his folder. Operationally, we go to ground. We limit travel. We avoid predictable routines. We instruct security to expect a decoy at the front door and the real threat from the side. Mercer almost smiled. You think she will try the front door? She prefers what people do not expect, Vern said, which often looks like simplicity. The session shifted to logistics. Contract renewals. Quiet transfers from accounts with boring names. Discreet instructions for private security firms that thought they were above the law because their clients had once written it. The phrases were bland. The meaning was not. Alaris listened and filed each piece. A name here. A ship registry there. A ranch airstrip that had not been on any publicly filed plan. She did not need everything. She needed enough to draw a map and choose 3 points. When the meeting closed, Vern stacked papers with the neatness of a man who needed control to breathe. Chamberlain stood, checked her phone, and slipped it into a clutch that cost more than some cars. Mercer cracked his knuckles and pretended not to notice the tremor in his left hand. They walked out the door like executives. The room emptied. The oak-paneled hallway hushed. In the observation suite, the security man turned to Alaris. Your principal will be down shortly. You can take the service elevator if you prefer to avoid the group. That would be helpful, she said. He led her to a quiet corridor. She thanked him, pressed the elevator button, and stepped inside alone. As the doors closed, she sent the first tranche of audio. The file split and replicated, wrapped in noise to confuse automatic filters. One copy headed to a government inbox she did not trust. One went to a private server run by a watchdog group that had never met a scandal it did not love. The rest went to dead drops she had prepared years ago and never expected to use. The elevator deposited her into a granite corridor near a loading dock. She walked out into clean spring air. The Alps stood on the horizon, clear as a promise. She bought a coffee from a cart and stood in the square while a street musician tuned his guitar. She did not look back at the tower. She considered what she knew. The archive existed. It required 3 keys. Vern would keep his close. Chamberlain would keep hers as a bargaining chip she could deny existed. Mercer would hide his behind men with guns and gates that opened to no one. She also considered time. They would scatter now. They would bury their traces. Every hour she waited was an hour their advantage grew. But speed without structure made mistakes. She had lived long enough to know which kind of mistake got people killed. Her phone vibrated with a coded reply. The first server had received the file. The second was already mirroring it to a vault. The third, the one she did not trust, had flagged it and blocked it. Perfect. It meant the right people were watching. She crossed the river and boarded a tram, riding 3 stops and changing lines twice. By the time she reached the station, she was another face among commuters. She bought a ticket to Geneva and took the second car from the end, window seat, back to the engine. A habit formed from years of paying attention. The train slid south through fields and neat villages. She stared at her reflection in the glass and saw not the trainer from Finland, not the contractor from Caracas, not the consultant from the 38th floor. She saw a problem solver with a short list and a longer memory. If she was right, she was not the only one who survived. The program had dispatched people on field work the week the facility burned. You could not confirm a death if the person was not present. Certain names had never surfaced on any memorial. That was either error or intent. She knew which way to bet. She took out the token from her pocket and let it rest in her palm. The small ghost etched into its face caught the light and went dull again. The coin had weight because of what it meant, not because of the metal. 3 keys. 3 targets. She would not go alone. Her message to the first operative was 2 words and a meeting place under a false name that only one other person would recognize. The response arrived 8 minutes later with a time and no signature. The second took longer. The third came with an extra line that made her smile. The train curved along the lake. Boats moved like white commas on blue water. In the reflection, she watched calm pass over her, face the way a breeze smooths a pond. Caracas had been a statement. Zurich had been a confession. What came next would be an answer. She closed her eyes for a moment and let the plan settle. Vern in the Alps. Chamberlain at sea. Mercer on a spread of land where fences tried to do the work of conscience. 3 doors, 3 locks, 3 places where people believed money and walls would protect them from consequences. The world often rewarded that belief. Not always. When the train pulled into Geneva, she stepped onto the platform and blended into the flow. She did not look armed. She did not look important. She looked like someone headed to a meeting, because in a way she was. The kind that decides whether the past stays buried or surfaces with names attached. She walked out into sunlight, the coin cool against her palm. The Phantom had a pulse again. By tomorrow, it would have a team. The private jet touched down on a quiet strip outside Prague. The runway lights glowed dim against a slate sky, and the air smelled faintly of rain. Alaris stood at the edge of the tarmac, jacket collar turned up, her hand resting in the pocket where the Phantom token lay. She had sent 3 messages into the dark. Now she waited to see who would answer. The cabin door opened with a hiss, and 3 figures descended the stairs. They moved with a subtle precision she knew instantly. shoulders square, feet light, eyes cataloging details even as they approached. Zeph Ramirez, lean and sharp-eyed, had been the ghost in crowds even as a recruit. Kadar Nandi, broader, slower in appearance, but with the endurance of a glacier. And Lissa Volov, silent and deadly efficient, her every movement betraying the discipline of deep cover work. They didn't greet her with embraces or words of nostalgia. They didn't need to. A nod here, a glance there, and the weight of 8 lost years passed between them. Inside a rented hangar, Alaris spread files across a table. Images of 3 faces stared back at them. Anton Verne, Eliza Chamberlain, Isaac Mercer. She pointed to each in turn. 3 targets, 3 keys, 1 archive. Zephyr leaned in, scanning the photos. Simultaneous. Yes, they'll expect someone to strike. They won't expect us all at once. Lissa folded her arms. Rules of engagement? The same as always. Phantom standards. No fatalities. Evidence only. Cotter's brow furrowed. And if they resist, they will, Alaris said simply. But they don't understand what it means to face 4 phantoms working together. That's our advantage. The planning lasted through the night. Every guard rotation, every escape route, every surveillance feed was examined until the maps looked more like choreography than logistics. By dawn, they were ready. Verne's compound. The Alps glittered with morning frost. When Alaris walked through the gates of Anton Verne's estate dressed in the crisp whites of a catering uniform. Her forged credentials matched the delivery manifest. The guards barely glanced at her. Inside, the house smelled of polished wood and expensive wine. 2 guards blocked the hallway to Verne's private office. She carried a tray, voice pitched with the irritation of staff. Lunch for Mr. Verne. Direct order from the kitchen. Suspicion flickered in one guard's eyes. He reached for his radio. That was all she needed. A tilt of the tray, a bottle slipping, their reflexes occupied. 2 strikes, precise nerve clusters at the base of their necks, and both dropped silently. Inside the office, Verne sat before a wall of security monitors. He didn't turn when the door opened. I said I wasn't to be disturbed. You should have been more specific, Director. He froze. Slowly he turned. Recognition hit like a physical blow. Frost. You made this easy, she said. Complex systems, predictable patterns. Always the same mistake. His hand twitched toward a panic button. She shook her head. Signals jammed. You have 10 minutes. Use them well. Fear and calculation warred in his eyes. If you wanted me dead, I would be. I don't train assassins. I need the key. His jaw tightened. You'll need all 3. I already know. Defeated, he retrieved a token from a safe, pressing his thumb to authenticate. He transferred the key to her device, eyes heavy with resignation. This won't bring them back, he murmured. No, but it will bring the truth forward. She left him conscious, alive, but shaken. He would be found minutes later by his guards, too rattled to speak. Chamberlain's yacht. Far south, on calm Mediterranean waters, Zeph Ramirez slid aboard Eliza Chamberlain's yacht under the cover of darkness. The sea rocked gently, masking his movements. The crew was disciplined but inattentive. Mercenaries paid for presence, not vigilance. He moved through the narrow corridors like smoke, disabling one guard with a nerve pinch, another with a sleeper hold. In Chamberlain's suite, she reclined with a glass of wine, reviewing financial statements on a tablet. She looked up, startled, as he appeared silently in the doorway. Who? Insurance works both ways, Zephyr said. Hand me the token. Her composure cracked, but only for a heartbeat. She tried to reach the panic button on the wall, but he was faster. Her wrist was pinned before her finger touched plastic. You think I'm afraid of you, she hissed. No. I think you're afraid of being irrelevant, he replied. The words struck home. With trembling hands, she produced a key from a locked drawer, muttering curses under her breath. He took it, verified the transfer, and stepped back. You're free to keep sailing, he said. But the tide has changed. Mercer's ranch. In Colorado, Cotter and Lissa moved across the sprawling ranch under cover of night. Motion sensors blinked along the fences, but they had mapped blind spots with military precision. Mercer sat in his study, polishing a revolver that had never left its holster in years. He didn't hear the door open, didn't see Lissa until she had disarmed him with the ease of a teacher correcting a careless student. Cotter loomed behind, his presence a wall. "General," Lissa said, her voice calm, "you have something we need." He spat on the floor. "I'll see you both in hell before I—" Cotter cut him off with a single word, sharp as steel. Mercer's bravado withered. He looked from one to the other, saw nothing in their eyes but certainty. Slowly, he opened a concealed safe and withdrew the third token. Lissa scanned it, then pocketed the device. Mercer glared, but his hands shook. "You think this changes anything? We built the system you live in. It will outlast you." "Systems can be dismantled," Lissa said simply. Then they were gone, leaving him with his revolver and the weight of his own fear. The archive. 24 hours later, in Geneva, the 4 operatives gathered in a safe house. 3 keys, 1 archive. They slotted the tokens into a secure drive. Screens flickered. Files unfolded. Operational plans. Financial trails. Signed termination orders. Video footage from Finland. The night their facility burned. Proof not just of betrayal, but of murder. Alaris felt her throat tighten. The faces of the dead filled her mind. The young, the untested, the hopeful. Their laughter around campfires in the snow. Their discipline in training yards. Their belief that they were building something better. Now finally, their story could be told. She transmitted the archive to the International Security Oversight Committee. Another copy went to independent journalists. A third went into deep storage, encrypted and untouchable. Marcus Hargrove, her old handler, reviewed the files with grim eyes. "This is enough," he said. "Enough for trials, enough for warrants, enough to end careers." "Not lives," Alaris corrected. "That's not what we do." A new beginning. Weeks later, in the mountains of New Zealand, the sound of training echoed through a converted facility. Not gunfire, not explosions, just the rhythmic thuds of bodies learning to fall, recover, and move with precision. 20 recruits, drawn from humanitarian groups, peacekeeping forces, and rescue organizations, practiced the foundational forms of the Phantom Protocol. Alaris stood at the edge of the training floor, arms folded, eyes sharp but calm. Lissa instructed one group. Zephyr corrected another. Cotter demonstrated restraint, holds with quiet patience. They were building again, not in secrecy this time, not in shadows. A young recruit approached her. "Commander Frost, what if we have to use this for real?" Alaris rested a hand on the phantom token in her pocket. "Then you'll understand what we teach, that restraint is not weakness. It's strength. And power without restraint is just destruction." The recruit nodded, returning to the floor. Alaris allowed herself a breath. The ghosts of Finland would never leave her, but now they had a legacy that could not be erased. The program they had tried to kill was alive again, not hidden, not weaponized, but reimagined for a world that desperately needed alternatives to violence. The Phantom had been resurrected, and this time it would never vanish.